it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught, and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see, who created these? He who brings out their host and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength. Mighty in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
Thanks be to God. Hallelujah. How good it is to sing praises to our God. How pleasant it is to honor him with praise. The Lord rebuilds Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He counts the number of the stars and calls them all by their names. Great is our Lord and mighty in power. There is no limit to his wisdom. The Lord lifts up the lowly, but casts the wicked to the ground. Sing to the Lord with thanksgiving. Make music to our God upon the harp. He covers the heavens with clouds and prepares rain for the earth. He makes grass to grow upon the mountains and green plants to serve mankind. He provides food for flocks and herds and for the young ravens when they cry. He is not impressed by the might of a horse. He has no pleasure in the strength of a man. But the Lord has pleasure in those who fear him, in those who await his gracious favor. Alleluia.
A reading from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. If I proclaim the gospel, this gives me no ground for boasting, for an obligation is laid on me, and woe to me if I do not proclaim the gospel. For if I do this of my own will, I have a reward. But if not of my own will, I am entrusted with a commission. What then is my reward? Just this, that in my proclamation I may make the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my rights in the gospel. For though I am free with respect to all, I have made myself a slave to all, so that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, though I'm not free from God's law, but I am under Christ's law, so that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
When Jesus and his disciples left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Today is our first big encounter with the Gospel of Mark. We're going to be reading Mark all year, of course, but we've been interrupted by John quite a bit already, and it's already February. But today we're reading a continuation of what we read last week, which is from the very first book of Mark. Now, Mark doesn't have any birth, infancy narratives, any of that kind of stuff. He is just interested in Jesus and his ministry to us. So he cuts right to the chase. And Mark is not a person of many words. So let's look at the Jesus that is here in the first book of Mark, because I believe that Mark is setting the tone for who he thinks Jesus is and what Jesus is here to do for us on this earth. So after he's been baptized and he has been in the wilderness and been tempted, and he's come back and he has called his disciples, he goes into a temple or a synagogue, and he teaches. And this is the first thing he does as public ministry, right? And he preaches on the Sabbath. And people are astounded at what he says. And they say he has authority. And the word for authority in the Greek is not what we would usually call authority. It's really that who he really is, his power within him from his deepest self. So that's the word. So it's power. He has something innate to him that he is able to, that gives him the power to do what he's doing, this authoritative preaching. So it's not just that he's preaching and interpreting the scriptures. Suddenly, just then, there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. This is from last week's reading, but we didn't discuss it because we had our meeting. So suddenly this man comes in who has an unclean spirit. And normally, this man wouldn't have been allowed in the first place because he was acting up. So somehow he gets in there, and he must be doing something unusual that makes people know that he is possessed. I think that's the word we would use. And the man, the spirit in him, cries out, "Who are you? What do you have to do with me? You are the Holy One of God." Well, other people in the synagogue knew that he was preaching with authority, but I don't think they would have taken this step to say you are somehow special to God. You have a special relationship. And Jesus says, it says be silent. The Greek really says put a sock in it. It's pretty colloquial. And leave. Stop doing what you're doing. So the spirit yells and the man convulses, but the spirit does obey Jesus. And then all the other people in the synagogue say, wow, what authority. In other words, what power this man has. That even the spirits obey him. He can command them. The word for command is a very strong word. It's used, well, we use this in English this way, but it really means somebody who is in charge of an army. He can marshal the spirits to do what he tells them. So he has this enormous power on his first public appearance after his baptism, when he's on his mission. First thing he does, he's overwhelming in his power. So the passage we read today is after he's done this, then he goes to the home of Andrew and Simon Peter, who are brothers, and they are, I guess, are planning to have dinner there. And Simon Peter's mother-in-law is there, and she's sick. She has a fever. So people, and the disciples said, we have a good idea. So Jesus, she's not feeling well. So he goes over to her, and he takes her by the hand. And she gets up, and she is healed. Well, in the original, the take by the hand is a very interesting word. It's not a word you would normally use. The word is to take power over. Like in English, the word autocrat, the crat part, being a ruler of your own, that's the word. He has power over her hand. Isn't that weird? She's just lying there in bed sick. He takes power over he gives her the power to heal. This evil illness leaves her. So there's another word that shows his power. And then, of course, by this time, his fame has spread throughout the town. So, right outside their front door, all these people who were sick, people who were possessed, whatever that meant in those days, they're all out there. And so he spends the evening healing these people. And when the demons are there, he says, don't tell anyone who I am. Because they know him. Just like that first demon, they know he is the Holy One of God. And he knows them too. And then the next morning, he goes and prays. And then he continues on. He's got this big preaching tour, as they call it. He goes and visits all sorts of people. And he continues to heal and cast out demons. Power. He has the power to do this. And apparently nobody else does. The last story that closes the first chapter of Mark is a story that we're all familiar with. We're not going to read it until July, but it's really important to see what Mark is saying here. And it's the story of the man with leprosy who comes to Jesus and asks him to heal him. I think we all know the story. The man comes and says, if you're willing, please heal me. You can heal me. And Jesus is moved with pity, as it's translated, and he says, I'm willing. And he touches him. Again, it's this hand, this powerful hand, different language, and he heals him. And the man is free and goes around and tells everybody how fabulous Jesus is. So he too talks about Jesus' power. And the word here, there's another word for power. There are 4 different words used, and I think that's on purpose, so that we realize that Jesus' power is all-encompassing. It covers everything. The word here, when it says you can heal me, is the word that we know in English as dynamic, or dynamite. That's a Greek word for power, just one of many. He is able to do this. So he heals him, and barely just touches him, just like he touched Peter's mother-in-law. That's all it took for Jesus that we see. So here's this man who has this tremendous power, and he has just burst on the scene. That's what Mark wants us to know. Okay, so we get it, right? We see this person of great power. Well, what does that power mean? How does that work for us today? Is there still this power in the world? Has that all gone away? Well, no. Because the problem is that sickness and what we probably wouldn't call demonic possession, but difficult things, people acting badly, crazy, terribly, have those things gone away? No, I was just sick all last week, you know. Maybe I was acting badly, but no, this stuff is still very present. And these demons, I'm going to lump sickness and demons together, and demons are a little more interesting to talk about. These demons are smart, right? They are the ones who recognize Jesus. The regular people just thought, wow, this guy's just amazing. They're kind of bowled over, but they don't know who he is. The demons all know exactly who he is. So they're smart. So these bad things, these demonic possessors, and these illnesses, and all these things that are causing harm in the world, aren't stupid. And they are powerful also. They have a lot of energy. Peter's mother-in-law could have died. The man with the skin condition, the leprosy, could have spent his whole life in isolation. Because that's what happens when there is something bad. We as human beings tend not to name it and say, this is bad. This should not be happening. And we push it away. Because it's easier. Don't get into a fight with so-and-so about whatever they're doing. Just let it go. Nothing will happen. We just won't talk about it, and we'll just avoid that. Well, we have a terrible example of what happens when you do that. And it's been in the news for the last few weeks in particular, and that is the Olympic doctor, the doctor for the Olympic gymnastics team. This man was abusing children for almost 20 years. People knew, people said, other people didn't talk. It's a horrible situation. But this went on for so long. And this is evil. This has ruined lives. The fact that he's going to jail for the rest of his life is really, I don't want to say irrelevant because no soul is irrelevant, but the hundreds and hundreds of people, the girls he abused, their families, the whole, the trust in medicine and doctors, in these schools and organizations, everything, because it was hidden. No one wanted to talk about it. And this is what I believe creates evil. I do not believe there is evil existing by itself in the world, because we are created by God, and this whole world is created by God. But when things happen, and we don't speak the truth about them, and it gets pushed away, and it grows, and it does bad, and that's evil. So Jesus is saying, speak the truth. He identifies someone as ill. Some people don't even like to admit that they are sick, right? And you understand it because people can treat you strangely. Some people don't want to admit that they have problems. You don't want to admit that there are systemic evils in this society. Poverty, racism, all sorts of things. We don't talk about them, and they don't get better. And that is what is evil. So Jesus, as we see, Mark shows us he has power. He has power because he is the Holy One of God. He comes from the Creator who created only good. And he's not hiding anything. The very word demon, which sounds like a bad spirit, something bad and evil and awful, originally didn't mean anything bad at all. It was just the word for a spirit. A good spirit, a spirit that lived in your garden and kept your tomatoes free from tomato worms, stuff like that. I mean, you'd like one of those, right? That was the old word for spirit. But we have turned this into a bad thing because hidden evil, hidden spirits become evil and do evil things. So what happens to these spirits and these sicknesses and things when Jesus tells them, go, depart from this person, or heals someone? What happens to that energy? Because Jesus comes from God, we know that energy doesn't just disappear. We know enough about physics these days. It turns into good. It turns back to what God wants it to be. There's all that energy of hiding and stuffing things away and covering up. And all that energy is now free to do good. Because everything is in the light. Everything is true. Jesus is willing to say, to call a spade, I guess is a phrase, to name things for what they truly are. And that's the point of the leper story. We know that he's got the power to heal, but he's willing. And that word is repeated twice. The leper doesn't say, oh, Jesus, please heal me. He says, if you are willing, you have the power. Right? And Jesus responds, I am willing. If we are willing, we too have that power. That's why Jesus came here, is to give us this power to do good, to look at bad and evil that's happening and say, this is bad. This has to be changed. To name what is wrong and make it right. Just in the naming, that starts the process. Now, Jesus also has to be willing because it's hard work. Remember, he was fully human as well as fully divine. So when he's out there, after all this healing he's done, and he goes out in the morning and it's dark and it's quiet, and he's praying, he needs a break. And he doesn't get it. Because everybody's out there hunting him. Not just looking for him, they're hunting him down because they want him to keep healing and keep doing these things. So this poor guy must have been exhausted. It's not surprising his ministry was actually pretty short. He has this power and he has given it to us. So our job is to be willing. Willing to use this power from God for good. In this parish, you have that power because you are going to be choosing a new rector. And this is a good time to think about that. The Day of Discovery is coming in March. To be thinking about how can we best choose? How can we do the most good? How can we uncover anything that needs to be brought out into the light and move forward and live into this power of Jesus? Because he gives it to us. And we are blessed to have this. So don't be afraid of demons. Get out there, live in this power, and bless everyone around you with it. Amen.